Hello everybody, this is Kristen from Christopia Studios. Welcome back to my channel. Today you're viewing a speed painting of a commissioned pastel of a dog that I recently did. The background is a blurred or bokeh background. It's B-O-K-E-H, just means blurred. There's a lot of orange in the dog's fur, and blue is a complementary color of orange, so a blue background suited this portrait quite nicely. I like to get my backgrounds in first, especially when I'm doing an animal, because then I can pull the fur out over the background. This way you don't get a halo effect where there's no pastel in the background where the hair is going over. And plus, I don't like to redo stuff. I know a lot of people will put the subject in first and then put the background in, and it layers over the little bits of hair and fur on the edges of the animal that you have to put back in again. So I prefer to do it the other way. So I used pan pastels and soft tools, that's S-O-F-F-T, for the background and for the base values in the dog's fur. I love pan pastels. They save a lot of time and blend very easily, and they last forever. They just go on and on, these little pastel trays. So you may think that they're expensive when you look at the prices of them individually or the prices of the 20-piece color sets, but really they last a long time. So a little goes a long way. I certainly pay as much for pastel sticks that are nice and high quality artist sticks, and they don't last nearly as long as pan pastels do. So this particular dog is a very good example of choosing a portrait that shows an animal's personality, not just its beauty. The person who commissioned this portrait chose this particular picture because it made her smile. It made me smile too. I call it the "I'm judging you right now" look, and you'll see that more as this progresses. So I like to work, a lot of people like to work from the top left or top right, depending on whether you're left or right-handed, of a pastel portrait. I tend to prefer working over the whole piece to get values in and get colors in. I'm a little ADHD, so I don't want to have to remember the colors I used in one part of the dog down through the rest of the dog. So I like to get those things in first, all over the animal. I'm left-handed, as you can see. I just use a piece of glassine or tracing paper under my hand to keep from smearing. That's the thing about pastels, is you can smear them pretty easily. And I like to get the facial expression, eyes and nose in early on, because to me, if those aren't right, the rest of the image is not going to be right either. So I'll probably come back and work more on these details later, but in the meantime, I like to get those facial features in early. There's a lot of personality in a dog's nose, I've discovered since starting to work in pastels. And you really want to get those little ridges and bumps and highlights in on the nose. I spent a lot of time on this dog's nose because, number one, it's prominent. The way that the photo is the dog's looking directly at you. He's a German Shepherd mix, but you can't see his long snout because of the angle of the picture. So I had to, there were not highlights in the photo that enabled me to extend that muzzle and make it look as long as it is. So I will eventually have to fake it and put a little shadow in to make his nose look longer at the end. But I'm just laying in those values with my pastel pencils. And now I've got that judgmental expression begun. So I wanted to make sure that expression was just right before I moved on to putting detail in the rest of the painting. So I'm going back over. One of the wonderful things about Clairefontaine Pastel Matte is the name of the paper. It's not sanded, it's kind of a silica or corky kind of surface, but it works similarly to a sanded paper, but it takes so many layers of pastel that I can just continue going over and over and over some of these areas to add that detail and depth in. One of the things you want to remember when doing a pastel is that your values are important. You want your darks to be as dark as they need to be, and you want your lights to be as light as they need to be. You also want to know that there are very few pure whites in nature, but sometimes you want to use a white to highlight certain areas. In this case, I'm using a very light warm gray more often than the white. There's just a very little bit of white in the muzzle area, in the highlights. You just keep working those layers and getting that depth. Notice I'm leaving some of that dark just so that I can elongate that muzzle on the dog. I want to make sure that that facial expression stays because, as I said, this dog's facial expression is why the person who commissioned this portrait commissioned it in the first place, is because it makes her laugh every time she sees it. So I want to get it just right with that face. I use a cotton swab to blend layers. To get really dark colors, I'll not only use black, but I'll use pastel sticks as well, right there to get that dark in there. And I also don't just use black, I use grays, I use blues. There are a lot of colors in black fur. It's not just a neutral matte black. There's blues, there's reds, there's all sorts of colors in there, especially when you have an animal that's both brown and black. Just laying in those last touches, making sure every hair is where I want it to be, kind of pulling them out into the background. I love how he stands out from that blue background. He just kind of pops forward, which is exactly what I hoped would happen. I'm putting in those darker colors to make the muzzle look longer. Since there's nothing in the photo reference, it wasn't a great photo, but we couldn't get a better photo because the dog lives somewhere else. This is the commissioner's daughter's dog, so we had to make do. But I think I got the illusion of his muzzle being longer in the end. I hope you enjoy this pastel painting along with the music. For a full-length tutorial of this and many other art pieces and techniques, head on over to my new Patreon page, where for only $5 a month, you can get tutorials in multiple media, including pastels, acrylic pouring, and embellishing pours with detailed works, and more. It also supports my growing art business so that one day I might be able to make a full-time job out of it. I hope you're well and safe. See you soon.